Welcome to Coffee. Kelsey. Today we're discussing consciousness, conscious creativity, cultivating consciousness, knowing our truths, revealing who we are, being our most powerful selves, right? Let's see. Yeah, because we're going to step into the star power, shining the brightest, working through a lot of these difficulties and challenges. And a big part of what I do is coaching through transformation, transformative coaching. I'm going to look at two of discs here. I'm going to start off with the book. We're going to start with our research. We're going to start with an objective outlook, and then we'll start diving more into, the authority behind it. I think owning authority is what is standing out to me today. And as I say, there's a mountain bluebird outside, looking through the window. Two discs. We're talking duality of life, ripening and rotting, waxing and waning, yin and yang, light and dark, the cell dividing itself in two. As far as the first act of reproduction, well, that's interesting in the creative process, right? Because one of our main driving systems is this procreation, right? Maybe we want to lump it into the word sex or into that category. That gets very complex as far as describing behaviors. So if we're talking about creation, procreation, professional creation, creating something that is of the highest good, we think genetically, right? The strongest genes will win. Ideally, at least that's what we're hoping for, right? We're looking for natural selection within this, where we're deciding what, right? We have to make some sort of decision, but if we're going to be looking at decisions and talking about decisions, then we're talking about duality or conflict, or if there's transformation from one to the other, polarity. And one of the pictures that's been standing out to me this week in my own meditations is this concept of like a whole sheet of paper, right? And if it's torn in half, you have a positive side and a negative side. And forever are these two things trying to reunite, or quantum entanglement comes into mind as well. When you have two particles that are electrically charged or magnetized or attracted to each other, or have this quantum or metaphysical force that's influencing them no matter how close or how far apart, right? There's always this drive to want to reconnect. I think perhaps that's why we have such a strong polarity between the positive and the negative within our language and within our culture, and the toxic positivity is longing for this negative influence and this negative balance and this charge, like a battery, right? Because it allows the current to flow, or we become aware of what's current and in the present point in time, because we have a comparative, right? There's comparative analysis comes to mind, where we analyze something and we have to make a judgment from that. Judgment might be a topic for another day, because as we say here, there's no judgment at my table. It's not good, it's not bad. We don't live in a world or project or communicate from a realm of duality. Yet here we are in duality and working through duality, right? Trying to ascend into something more, not fragmented, perhaps fractalized comes to mind. I don't know if that's a real word, but fractalized, or faceted, multifaceted, like a jewel or a diamond, where when light comes into it, it disperses it in many different ways, and it shows as a sparkle or a reflection, but light, right? There's more to it here. Well, okay, so we're talking about the self-division before creating. So this is that internal conflict. Do I do it? Do I not do it? Should I not? I like this, I hate that. Why am I like that? Right before we engage in a creative act or a creative process, there's this self-reflection and an opportunity for, let's say, the insecurities to come through, right? Or there are hidden elements. But it's talking about the gears of material existence slowly overcoming inertia. So there's a force on one side that's pushing at us, and we can either cave into that and let it plow us over, right, and like succumb and submit to this, or we can create a presence and we can push back against that, right? We can own our space, maintain our authority in that space, because after the star, here we have the Chariot. So we're talking about movement, that inertia. There's a force upon you that is life, motivating you to live. And what is life? What are those motivating factors? Procreation and sustenance. What is going to sustain that? Somewhere in there, there's a spiritual drive if we're talking about the light body. Or if we want to suggest that spiritual drive is something much deeper than, say, a religion or a dogmatic practice, then we can go into this territory of interdimensionality and otherworldly beings or other dimensions of vibrational qualities, and how we, let's say, travel or move through these various levels and dimensions and vibrations, right? Somewhere in there, consciousness comes to play. We don't necessarily know what that is or where exactly that has come from. Maybe we'll look more at the Ace of Wands, because there's unification in that manifestation from these differing elements, bringing in these light bodies and these harmonics, creating this lived ethereal experience. And if we're talking about consciousness as an illusion or as like a mere phenomena, then we get into this created world where we're trying to suppose meaning or find ways to control or exert influence on our environment. This one says, consider your basic earthly needs and how you will fulfill them. That's that physical body. If we're spiritual bodies inhabiting a meat suit, right? We have to be mindful of this meat suit and how we take care of it, and taking care of the earth and so on and so forth. And I think our perspective has been from the ground up, bottom up, maybe more so than from the top down, right? So these lenses or perspectives that we want to take are going to greatly influence our transformative qualities, our transformative process. Growth has just begun. In the time frame, right, the Homo sapient is still very fresh. In the larger time scale of human evolution, we're talking about a blink. And we can assume there will be another evolved form. And here we have come into a state of consciousness, a conscious awareness, and we have an understanding of what evolution is. So there is opportunity to evolve from this space of consciousness into these light bodies, into the Homo luminous, right? Homo luminous or bust. If we are ruled by these sapient laws and physical bodies around us, it's going to limit our creative potential. Our resources are going to be limited to that which we know like what's right in front of us. What I teach from the creative side of things is where we source in this knowledge and source in this information. So we can tap into the collective conscious, into this morphic resonance field. Thank you, Rupert Sheldrake, for that one, right? Where we have a storage container for all of these various vibrations. These vibrations are storing information, knowledge, pictures, however we want to describe that information. It's an energy, and our meat suits are a conduit for this energy, so we can channel in this information. So as we have these readers that show up in places like these, right, we can connect into various channels or various sources, and we can pull in information, and then we can disseminate that information and direct where that information can flow. I don't necessarily want to say where we direct it to go, because it's not going to go where I want it to go, unless, say, I'm a dictator. But if I release that energy into the flow, into the natural current of existence, right, then I release the outcomes, I put forth the energy, and I allow that energy to go into the direction that it wants to go, right? So there's a co-creative aspect, there's a trust in that connection. You must find a distinction between that which serves you and which does not. So, is this good or is this bad? Judgment itself is not bad. We don't leave it out of the conversation and off the table because it doesn't exist or it's not a good quality or a trait, right? If we judge something, we're constantly making judgments. And it's not whether the inherent quality of the thing itself is good or bad, because it's an arbitrary, tangible object that we put our meaning onto. Where the judgment comes into play is in the realm of accountability, right? Where we're being conscious of ourselves and our actions and our intentions and our energy, and where that energy is coming from and where that energy is going. So if you can mindfully direct all of that energy and where that information is being channeled to and from, right, or be a conscious participant in the flow of all, then we can discern with that judgment of what is good for our highest good and what is not. Because you can have multiple options on the table that all can be good. But you have to pick one, or find a compromise between them, or some sort of solution between them, some sort of creative outcome, if we don't want to call it a compromise. So then how do we know if something is good for us or bad for us? Can we perceive it to be both good and bad and look at what those are, and then make a decision from there? A conscious decision, play out some odds and ends, be mindful of what our conditioned behaviors are, what our triggers are, right? Because if we have triggers within us and we allow something to pull that trigger, shots fired. And we want to not fire shots, but exude love, exude light. Let's look to the Ace of Wands. Wands are standing out as far as manifestation. So if we're going to bring something into reality, how would we really know? We have to kick out the ego, make sure we're not sourcing from here, from some of these lower vibrational places, pulling things out of the earth, all the pains and toxins from there, and then using that. That's only going to keep us at these vibrations that we're at. We're not going to evolve or elevate. May or may not devolve, but stagnation, yes. So let's see, Ace of Wands. In wands, we're talking about fire. Wand, like magic wand. Alchemy. Alchemizing something. Transformation is alchemy. When I put this into the fire, it will come out something new. When I put this into the flame, it may come out much stronger, but there will be an alchemical reaction, especially if we put this and this and this and this into the fire all at the same time. They're going to react with each other and create a new substance. Ace of Wands, essence of fire. This is our will. How we use that will, again, where we're directing that will. What is the will? Let's define will, because that's one of those words that I feel is used a lot, right? So it kind of loses its meaning. Like if you say the same word over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, it's going to lose its meaning, and it just sounds like sounds, right? So will definition. Expressing the future tense, expressing inevitable events. A legal declaration of a person's wishes regarding the disposal of his or her property or estate after death. A written instrument. How things are distributed. Will means to want or to choose, to make a choice. And I have funny thoughts about choice, especially from a behavioral background. I've studied psychology for a long time, and my degrees are within an integral field. And behaviorism really caught my eye, because when we're talking about the conditioning of behavior, right, we have all these different stimuli that we come into contact with. There's an antecedent before the stimulus. The antecedent elicits a behavior. The behavior then elicits a consequence. That consequence is either a punishment or a reinforcer, and depending on whether it's a punisher or a reinforcer, we can determine whether or not that behavior is going to be conditioned in a specific or certain way, or we can begin to predict certain outcomes based on our conditioned knowledge. So our ability to choose then is limited based on our conditioning history and our ability to learn how to make choices or to make judgments within that. And from the judgments and our ability to create a future idea, projection, or an understanding that we want to strive for or away from, right? Avoiding or obtaining, push and flow, push and pull, right? That duality nature again. The ebb and the flow. One can't exist without the other. If we start with one cell, it's neat if you watch the molecular biology of a cell as it's dividing, right? The division of a cell. It goes into this vibration, and there's like a pop of light almost, it seems, where there's a light, and then all of a sudden it's two. And they exist for a moment, and then they vibrate, and then a pop of light, poof, and then there's two. And then they multiply, and then they multiply. And so in the realm of duality, right, within each component, dual, two, there is the potential for two more within each. So we have this like infinite division of opportunity, and although it's dual, it's multifaceted, right? So we can begin to look at the as above, so below nature of things, right? What is your will? Where are you striving and moving to? When you can understand and control that energy, right, then you can begin to choose.